There we go. All right, today we're going to run through a couple of things pretty quickly. And I want to do lots of questions and answer today because I don't want to leave you guys, with any questions unanswered. I'd like to thank everybody for coming back. So this is a really good turnout on the third day. I know during the bubble demonstration, there was 10 people asleep. It's okay. The chairs really suck. And I really appreciate you guys hanging in there. I know I just went on. And I think we did 6.5 hours yesterday. Yeah. And I appreciate you guys that those chairs. So thank you. I hope you guys learned some stuff. So we skipped past this yesterday because I saw everybody falling asleep, and I was hoping the bubble pictures would get everybody woken up. So we really want to talk about harvest and curing now. Before I get started, and before I read this little thing here real quick, I will say that this is an area where so many people make mistakes, and it's so freaking easy. I mean, me and Jim don't understand how people mess their weed up doing this, because you're not going to see some laboratory where we cure our pot. I mean, we try it out, and we jar it up, and we got Dank. So, but one of the things I think personally a lot of people do wrong is leave their leaf on their bud, because leaf has a certain smell. So we're going to talk about getting the leaf off of the bud as quickly as possible and how to process. So let me read this thing so we make sure we get the right stuff. Properly processing cannabis at harvest is a craft that must be mastered in order to enhance and preserve its psychoactive properties, taste, and the appearance of the finished product. Many talented growers fail to implement some of the following techniques, and the result is not up to maximum potential. Inadequate or poor handling after harvest is the biggest cause of less than top quality medical cannabis. The problem is compounded by the fact that most growers feel their own medicine is better than anyone else's. Try telling any grower in this room, who is your friend, that he or she could do a better job, and you risk losing a friendship. And I've been in that situation before. I had a friend whose pot was just awful. He dried it next to an incandescent light bulb. And as politically correct as possible, I said, hey, dude, I said, can we, if you took your time a little bit, oh, fuck you, you don't know everything. I mean, that dude, my friend is not speaking anymore. So I don't make that mistake anymore, but in this class, hopefully, since you guys have paid to listen to me tell you the truth, we can do the truth. Do I have my clicker today? It's just you? I'm cool with that. Okay, so we got a plant. We followed all the steps that we talked about yesterday. We've got a plant to the end of the cycle. We check those trichomes, what we're looking at during the amber alert, and we know that we want to take this plant down. This plant right here is Emerald Triangle Funk. It was a really crazy strain that we grew a couple years ago, and it smelled like an old hippie. It really did, man. Like smoke a bunch of dye. No, I believe me, I know. I was like, wow, is this the bud or is this you, homie? Anyway, you can see that this plant is definitely, it's time for this plant to come down. So we're going to get our implements of destruction. I use small scissors, and I use these turkey pans. I put this turkey pan in here for a reason. Remember we talked about static hash yesterday, that friction hash? Man, do yourself a favor and go by the Dollar Tree and get you some of these, because it's just total bonus stuff as a trimmer. When you get done, these pans are coated in keef. You just rub your finger and then pull it off and get the full mouth off. And once they get dirty and everything, you throw them away and they cost $1. So, it's a pretty smart way to do it. And then just me, I actually went and I got a deli top for the top. So we're gonna take the bud off. Now I do this in stages. I never take a whole plant down and leave it in a pan to wilt, because that just makes more work. We all know that. And so we get it in our pans and we go to work on it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off everything that doesn't have sugar on it or resin. So you can see we've taken all of this leaf off, and it doesn't have sugar on it, or mostly doesn't have sugar on it. And believe it or not, I actually just throw this away. I compost it. I can see a couple of leaves in there that I would have reached down and picked out. But for the most part, this is what we call trim 1, and we're just getting rid of the waste from the bud. And then that's the trim 1 pile. Next, we're going to take and we're going to trim every single leaf off of this plant. This is where we get that yummy, yummy bubble from that we were looking at yesterday. So this is trim 2. it's kind of funny. I have people that help me trim, and I've had a very hard time relinquishing this job. I don't mind if they do the first trim, but this is my hash, man. This is where I get my smoke. So, the reason we want to do this, and this is what it looks like. So when we were talking, we'll combine some things. We were talking about yesterday about garbage in, garbage out, or magic in, magic out. This is what's going in our bubble bag. So if it doesn't look like this, and I've seen people bring me shake and make bubble out of it, but it's not this. And I'm like, well, my bubble sucks. How come my bubble sucks? It's just sugar trim sucks. So, and then we simply hang the stuff now. I actually used this crazy shot on purpose. This used to be a playroom that we had, or we did whatever. It was just a common room where nobody went into. But you don't have to have anything special other than a clean room. This room was clean. There were no animals in it, or dogs, or trash. We simply put a fan in the room, in the corner, and we let the plant dry. I mean, this is not rocket science. 70, 75 degrees, 50% humidity. It doesn't really need to be dark, but you don't want intense light put on it. I know you read in the books, you read that light degrades THC. I don't necessarily believe that just ambient light is going to do anything to the bud. Obviously, I believe if you had a high intensity light shining on your crop, or it was out in the sunshine, yeah, I can see some real problems. So.
Were you commenting yesterday about tuning the lights out for, say, 2 days?
Yeah, before harvest, thank you. Before harvest, I actually will put my plants in a dark room. There's 2 reasons I do this. If you haven't figured it out right now, at Sub's house, there's 4 rooms full of marijuana at all times. So when that plant is at 59 days and I have determined it's ready, believe me, I've got a 4-foot plant in a room right next to it that would really like that place, and a clone in the bedroom that needs to be transplanted and put in that. That's that canopy management stuff. And we produce marijuana every 60 days like a drum. Boom, boom, boom. I can do 6.5 harvests a year. You know, and if you stay efficient, you can produce a really lot of cannabis in a small area. So we hang it, we get it dried. Well, back one. Sorry, Stephanie. I like to label everything up. Just use common sense and keep everything separated. So we've got our Jack the Ripper over here, and we've got our Agent Orange over here. So you can see how close we've trimmed. You see how close this bud has all been trimmed. So the reason we want to get the leaf off of it, I'm assuming everybody in here trims, right? You guys trim? So you know the pile that you put your sun leaves in? You notice after a day or two it smells like shit, right? It smells like hay. It smells like cow food or something like that. I believe that if you leave any of the leaf on the bud, it absorbs that leaf smell back into the plant. So now Dave at Wheaton, they hang their pot without trimming it. It's 145 pounds of weed. They just can't trim it all. Don't you imagine Dave goes down there and grabs his favorite buds and finishes them in the stage? Of course he does. You guys just don't see that in the articles because outdoor guys cannot trim at the same level we do. This is tedious, wrist-breaking, life-changing stuff. I've been trimming for 2 decades and I got rheumatoid arthritis so bad I can't trim anymore. So, but this is the job I do, and so that's part of it. I still do it all on my own with a little pair of hair-cutting scissors. I get in there, get it all out. So.
What do you think of those trim pros?
They're horrible, man. They destroy you won't ever get bubble like you saw in the pictures up here at this school if you get a trim pro. If you have, a garden of marijuana to be processed and you're processing it and you got to get it to market, great. That's what it's for. But we're actually here learning how to grow dank. And so that stuff is more for the commercial and stuff. So they destroy the resin, simply put. As they go through the wheel, they crush the leaf. When the vacuum bag sucks it down and you get that big giant bag of trim, when you open it up, it does not look like that picture we were looking at with all the sugar on it. I have looked into a lot of devices because my hands are really hurting right now. And they make a pair of scissors that, it looks like a tattoo gun, and it whirs back and forth. Oh man, I was screwing my buds all up with it. If you get too close, you take a big hunk of bud out, and it just didn't work. And plus I was scared of cut myself with the thing, because I'm a kind of goofy guy, and I'd spill shit, knock shit over, break glass, and I can see stabbing myself with this thing. So, unfortunately, the only thing I know to do this with properly is a really nice pair of scissors. I actually have about a $45 pair of titanium hair cutting scissors that ergonomically fits in my hand, and I clean them a lot. That may sound like a common sense thing, but it's not. I mean, you trim for a while, you scrape your bubble hash off, don't put that stage, and then you wash them off with alcohol, and you'd be surprised if you just constantly do that, how much faster it runs. Those little scissors, you know, they get gummed up, and you're working hard, and you don't realize it if you don't have arthritis, but once you get arthritis, you're like, good God, this is just killing me. So I keep my scissors clean, and I clean them a lot. So you can see just a couple of buds that we trimmed out here. Now they're getting dry. And this is the stage when we want to get them off the plant. Now, I can't really illustrate this so much, it's just really explaining to you guys. Once the buds start getting crisp, but the stems themselves are pliable. I mean, they're not snapping yet. We want to get this cannabis off of these stems. The reason we want to do this is because the flowers now are pretty much devoid of moisture and getting very close to where they need to be for finished product. But the stem still contains an enormous amount of moisture. And this process of slowing down, if people leave it on too long, I think it changes the taste of it. So I'm getting my flowers off the stem at this stage, which is about 5 to 7 days after trimming in this climate. Arizona, 3 days. I can tell you, remember we were talking about my buddy in Arizona? If you got a dehumidifier on and you're running the heater wide open and your grandma's staying with you, it's 83 degrees in the house, it's not going to be 2 days. And your pot's not going to taste that good. So we don't want a long, slow cure, not weeks and weeks and weeks. We just want a natural drying of the product. We don't want to accelerate it with heat. We don't want to accelerate it with dehumidification. At the same time, if you live in Seattle and you're drying in your garage and there's no heat, you're going to need to have a dehumidifier out there. Does this sound like common sense implication? You know, because if the pot hangs for, say, 15 days, then it will definitely taste different than this. I think it takes on smells that it's hanging or where it's at, and I think maybe 60-65% humidity is too high humidity to dry your bud in. It tastes funky. It tastes like socks, you know? So, and we don't want that. Musty, it really does. You know, we were talking about this earlier. People hand me samples all the time, and I always smile, but the truth is, I smell two things when I smell samples. I smell good pot. He handed me some nice smelling pot. I smell lemons and terpenes and stuff. Or it smells like hay. And if it smells like hay, they're doing something wrong, usually in the curing process. Because pretty much everybody can grow pot to maturation. Even if it's sick, it's going to be dank. That's the cool thing about cannabis. If you grow some good bud and you do a shitty job, it's still going to be really good bud because the plant's almost kind of magical. It's just that you can do so much better. So again, I'm just trying to show you what the buds look like once they've reduced in size. All strains also dry differently. I mean, people grow blueberry. It takes forever to dry. I don't understand what's going on. Versus a Space Queen, man, it dries pretty fast. It has a lot to do with the way it's structured. Just kind of want to show you how close we are. So now we have our pot off of the plant. Yeah, I thought so too. And we've let it dry. And I didn't have a picture here, so we got to picture this in our head, okay? After we cut those flowers off of the plant, we leave them in the turkey pans until they are the consistent we want them to be. And that consistency is the stem snaps. That's simple. Reach in the back, turkey pan, oven turkey roasted pan. You know what I'm talking about. Aluminum pans. Reach in there, bend it. It's bending. It's not ready yet. You don't want to be smoking this weed yet. You just want to let it hang out in sterile condition. Once you pick up the buds and they start snapping, obviously all of them are not going to be in that condition, right? The bigger buds are not going to be there yet, and the smaller ones are going to be there. That's when I start getting it into the jars. I don't close the jars, because we don't want to close it up with all that moisture and mildew. But we need to start slowing down the process now. We're right at the end. The flowers are dry, the moisture's been removed, except for the very last moisture in the biggest stems. And how do we get that out? We get that out by leaving them in the jars until they kind of approach the right texture, and then we close them up and open them back up again. So next slide, Stephanie. So you can see this is a harvest that I've just taken down, and it's all hanging out in my jars, and I'm just letting it get to where I want it to be. Now, I like pot really dry. It's just the way I am. I don't think any pot I've ever smoked in Europe was dried properly. My big thing when I went to Amsterdam was go out and spend about 400 guilders, get all my bud back in the room, and lay it all out over the radiator, and 2 days later it'd be ready to smoke. And it's actually pretty good too. Though some of the pot I thought sucked is actually really, the calorie mist from the radiator was killer once it was finished drying. So anyway, we want to eventually shut these jars. I'm just showing y'all some artistic shots now of actual bud. This stuff is ready to smoke, but it's not cured yet. And curing is simply leaving it in the jars. That's a bad shot. That's a better shot. So.
Now, curing it properly, it not only brings out the flavor, but
it does. So in between the time, so this was the picture I actually set up for you guys to show you it laying out. So not in a tin, but in a box. You know, we're going to leave this pot before it goes in the jars for probably 2 to 3 days before we get that stem snap. So when it comes off the stem, it's going to feel really dry, and then when you put it in a pile, it actually the next day you'll be surprised. You're like, wow, it's not as dry as I thought it was. Because it's just, you know. So the whole process takes about 10 days. Does that sound right, outside? 10 to 12 days, this entire process before we get it in a jar with the lid on. And here's really important. This happened to me one time. You have to take care of these jars. You got to think of them as little. You can't just stick them in the damn cabinet and leave them alone after 12 days, because you will get some mold and mildew on some certain strains. So you want to go in there in about a week and you want to open them up. Oh yeah, I got the Dank going on. It's going to start smelling really good the longer it's in the jar. Close it back up. Now we talked about this briefly, but I want to go over it. I keep my patient's meds and my head stash, and I provide 16 ounces every 2 months to 2 different patients of the pot you're seeing in these pictures. And it's the same pot I smoke. I don't throw it in bags or anything. We jar it all up, cure it, and take care of it. Unless they call me and bug me, and sometimes they go from pretty pot. But it's really important that we take care of it in the jar. So we want to have one jar that is, I like those big 2-liter mason jars, that we put all our head stash in and we leave it alone. We don't open that unless we're burping it or checking it, okay? And then I have these little jars that we actually use to smoke. And the reason I do this is because these jars, believe it or not, in a home, in the wintertime with heat, opened and closed, as long as it takes me and Miss Jill to smoke one, by the time we get to the end of the jar, the pot's too dry. And we don't really want that to happen to all of our head stash. So you think of it like putting away vegetables or something. And you have your main stash, put it away. Put it in those big jars and leave it away. I'm not saying don't look at it and don't check it. And when you guys hear me say that Jack the Ripper was cured for 1.5 years, it just means it's been in a jar in my cabinet for 1.5 years. I don't sell cannabis, and so it just kind of hangs out. And we give some away, and we come to events. Usually I get rid of most of my weed when we come to events, because we bring it to events and show off how good our pot is. You know, and that's kind of all I wanted to do with Subcool, was have really good pot. So.
Would you shake those jars up a little bit? Can I help you with
No.
Just leave them like that?
Yeah, just leave them. You know, if I reach down in there, and I'm like after say 12 days that I've jarred it, and I reach down in there and it's all spongy, I'll pour it back out. I'll just pour this back out for a day. You know, I may have missed that. This is something you guys are going to have to learn. This is not the macaroni and cheese part of growing, you know. You got to figure out why. Everybody knows, and when every once in a while somebody will hand you a bud and you're like, damn, you know, damn. And that guy knew what he was doing. And that's what I'm trying to teach you guys. So that's it.